What's up, guys? I'm Silent. I play for Team Elixir on their Hearthstone team. And today I'm going to be doing a deck tech on a sort of tempo-y zoo variation that I've been playing on ladder to some success. Pretty successful, I'd say. So, it is a zoo deck. It's a Warlock deck, of course. And right now on ladder you'll see typically the mid-range Demon Zoo that Demon Lock and Zoo is sort of transformed into, or the older version of your stereotypical standard Zoo, which is a little more aggressive. This is sort of a tempo Zoo deck. It's a little different, and it's sort of a combination of the two, I like to think. So let's go through the list. First up, we have 2 Power Overwhelming, just because it's pretty much the standard Warlock burst card these days. Plus 4 damage, a lot of synergy with cards in this deck like Nerubian Egg. And then we have 2 Abusive Sergeant, 2/1 plus 2 attack to a minion. What more can be said? It's great. Buffs your little dudes to trade up against bigger minions. It's again great with Nerubian Egg. Just a good all-around card. 2 Flame Imps, pretty much the best 1-drop in the game if you're playing as an aggro deck. Very aggressive. The only time the 3 damage really can kind of suck is against Hunter. This deck, I'd say, probably has good matchups against most decks, or at least a chance to win against most decks. Probably the worst matchup is Face Hunter. It's not unwinnable by any means, but you have to really play it smart and get your taunts. Speaking of taunts, we have 2 Voidwalkers. The other good Warlock 1-drop, a 1/3 taunt for 1. Awesome against Warrior. Awesome to protect your little dudes. Just all around good card. We have 2 Direwolf Alphas. A lot of the mid-range Zoo decks cut these guys because, he doesn't have as much demon synergy. He's pretty fragile. But in our deck, I'd say probably the main purpose of this deck is to have board control at all times, meaning you're trading your little dudes, your little creatures, minions, into bigger minions and just getting more value and out-tempoing your opponent. And this guy is going to really help you do that. You're going to be trading your 1/1s from Implosion, which we'll get to, turning them into 2/1s and smashing face with them, thanks to the Direwolf here. He also turns on your Nerubian Egg. He makes Voidwalker, trade with 3/2s. He buffs your Haunted Creeper. He's just an all-around great card in this deck. Then we have our 2 Haunted Creepers, probably my favorite 2-drop in an aggro deck. This guy is just so much value. He creates, 3/4 stats-wise for 2 mana, and he's very resilient. And that's another aspect of this deck we'll get to, is the resiliency to board wipes and removal. This guy being one of them, he's going to take a silence or other sort of removal to completely negate his death rattle. We play 1 Ironbeak Owl. The 1 of Ironbeak Owl is pretty good. You want the 1 of Silence in a lot of situations. There's a lot of good targets for Silence. Opposing Nerubian Eggs, Emperor Thorson, any sort of Sludge Belchers or taunts, really. And the 1 of is fine because your Warlock hero power lets you draw 2 cards a turn generally. So this guy will show up in your hand more often than not. Moving along with the 2-drops, we have 2 Knife Jugglers. I mean, what can be said? It's a 3/2 that gives you bonus damage for just playing guys anyway, which you're already doing. So he's a great card. He has a lot of synergy with Implosion, although you do have to wait till turn 6 to do that. It's sort of like an Unleash the Hounds combo, but a little bit later. 2 Nerubian Eggs. This card is great. If you can taunt it up with Defender of Argus, throw a Power Overwhelming on it, Abusive Sergeant, this card will almost always 2-for-1 your opponent. You trade it into their guy, it makes a 4/4, which then trades with at least one other of their guys, and is a pretty big threat on the board. It's just a great card. It also makes your opponent's board wipes, like Flame Strike, a lot less strong. If you play this out, oftentimes I'll play, a fairly decent board of, say, Knife Jugglers and Direwolf Alphas, Flame Imps, and whatnot, and then I'll just throw a Nerubian Egg out there. Even when I have an Abusive Sergeant in hand, I won't crack it if I'm playing against, say, like a Freeze Mage, because I know that they're going to at some point wipe my board, and this will be a problem for them. It's pretty weak to silence, though, so you got to watch out for that. We have, then moving on, 2 Imp Gang bosses. This guy is awesome, so good. He is the reason sort of Zoo has been revived. He's an awesome 3-drop, a 2/4 for 3, is a beefy body. You want more health than attack almost always anyway. He summons 1/1s, which is great. He's a little bit resilient to board wipes again, being able to spawn some 1/1s off of that. And the more 1/1s you have, the more you can trade them into bigger creatures with, say, Direwolf Alphas, Power Overwhelmings, Abusive Sergeants. You can make have a 1/1 imp with a Power Overwhelming trade into the first half of a Sludge Belcher, which is just awesome. Or an Azure Drake, or an Emperor Thorson. You can do a lot with the little 1/1s and all the buffs in this deck. Then we have 2 Implosions. This card, obviously very good. It can be a little bit swingy at times. Typically you should be rolling a 3 with this, statistics wise. But when you do roll a 2, it can kind of suck. But then when you do roll a 4, it can be game changing. That time that you roll a 4 on, say, an Azure Drake or a Spider Tank or something, and it makes a bunch of dudes. This card is just good. It's just a very good card, and it's such a big tempo swing, which is what this deck is all about, is tempo swings. Being able to, say, trade your weaker minions that this guy, Implosion, spawns a bunch of 1/1s, being able to then trade those into bigger minions with your buff cards, creates tempo, it creates a board too. So a lot of times, say against a deck like Freeze Mage or Handlock, where they have board wipes in them, I'll oftentimes just hold this card, or Druid maybe is a better example with their swipe. I'll hold this card until they use their first swipe on the board that I have, and then I'll be able to pretty much recreate the board with this card. This card gives you a board all on its own. It creates a whole bunch of 1/1 tokens. So it is nice to come back at your opponent after they kill off your creatures. Moving along, we have 2 Defender Gargus. This guy is great. He's really needed against Hunter. He creates that taunt you need. He makes your 1/1s stronger. He makes your 1/1s less vulnerable to, say, swipes and hero powers. This is just great. Good card, obviously. You don't usually want to keep it in your starting hand, though. Sometimes you do against Face Hunter, but oftentimes you want to mulligan it away and draw into it later, once you already have board control, which is what this deck is all about. You have to remember, Zoo typically will always trade into your opponent's creatures. You win by using your creatures as removal and just out-tempoing your opponent. Because you can draw 2 cards a turn, they usually can't unless you're playing against another Warlock, and you're killing their dudes, and you'll just always have more guys than they will. You just have to be careful of your life total. Then we have 2 Void Callers. Now, this deck is less demon based than the mid-range demon decks, but there still are a lot of demons. You have your Doom Guards, you have your Imp Gang boss, your Flame Imps, and your Void Walkers. And even your other Void Callers, sometimes you have both in your hand. So this card, honestly, I've had very few occasions where it hasn't pulled a demon out of my hand for free. And oftentimes it is the Doom Guard, and you get to save those 2 cards in your hand that the Doom Guard would discard. So this guy is just great. He's an all-around tempo card. He 2-for-1s your opponent easily, if not 3-for-1 by smashing a lot of dudes with your Doom Guard. He's a very tempo-y card for this tempo-based deck. Moving on to Doom Guard. This card, not much can be said about it. It's just great. It's a 5/7 with charge. The only downside is its battle cry. But oftentimes you're either pitching cards that you don't want, or you're getting rid of cards, or you're getting rid of no cards because you're playing him late game, or you're cheating him into play with Void Caller, which is just such a powerful move. If you can trade your Void Caller into another creature and then play a Doom Guard off of the Void Caller, it's just such a tempo swing oftentimes. The Void Caller, I should say, also makes this deck more resilient, and that's one of my favorite things about this deck, is that it doesn't just lose to Flame Strike. It doesn't just lose to Swipe, you know? If, say, my opponent Flame Strikes on turn 7 after I've built up a pretty decent board, and I have a Void Caller and a Haunted Creeper, and that Void Caller turns into a Doom Guard, and the Haunted Creeper turns into 2 1/1s, it's, you know, oftentimes it's like he just cleared my board and gave me better creatures. It oftentimes works out that way, which is great. Now the 2 Volcanic Drakes, is where it gets interesting. This card I've been experimenting with, and I think it's pretty damn good most of the time. There are times where you draw it in your opening hand, and it's kind of awkward. But honestly, if you treat this guy kind of like you would a Doom Guard, and you just save him for that tempo swinging turn, he's insane. Say you have an Implosion, and you have a bunch of Implosion Imps, and you trade them all into your opponent's board with the Direwolf Alpha, or even you don't even need a Direwolf Alpha a lot of times. You just trade your board into their board, because that's what Zoo does anyway. You're trading your guys with their guys, because you will have more creatures than them just because you're drawing more cards each turn with your hero power. This guy often comes out for very little mana. I've had so many turns where I've had 2 of these in hand late game and a board full of creatures. I'll trade my board into their board and play Volcanic Drake, and then a Doom Guard all in one turn. And your opponent just, at that point, they well played you, they concede a lot of the time, they just don't know what to do. This guy is such a tempo swing, thus the name Tempo Zoo. He's a very, very tempo-y card. The Void Walker, all of your abilities to buff your smaller minions, it's all about tempo with this deck and creating good value trades. And then, of course, we have our 30th slot filled with Dr. Balance. We have the Dr. Boom, which is where our curve caps off. We don't play Sea Giants. I'm not really a huge fan. I think Dr. Boom is enough. The Volcanic Drakes, your hand already has enough late game. Dr. Boom, not much can be said. Boom bots are insane. 7/7 for 7. Sometimes they'll get big game 100, but who cares? Because you have a bunch of boom bots and you're probably already ahead on board anyway. Because this deck very rarely loses board control. All in all, this deck I think is insanely fun. It's a nice combination, I like to think, of the mid-range Zoo and the more aggressive standard Zoo that we've seen in the past. It has a lot of potential to just completely out-tempo your opponent, and it's very resilient to board wipes and removal with all your Death Rattle minions and your beefy creatures. It's just a fun deck to play. Here we're going to go through and play a couple games, maybe a game or two, sort of show you how it works. Throw up a ranked game. So as long as we don't play against Face Hunter, we're probably pretty happy. It's going to be Face Hunter though, watch it. Every time. Okay. I can mess with another Warlock. We're going second, which is fine. Don't really want Implosion. And I think I can get better cards than these Direwolf Alphas, so we're just going to keep the Knife Juggler. This hand's awesome. We don't even need coin. It curves out perfectly on its own. So first, we're going to find out what kind of Warlock he is. He's most likely, since he didn't have a 1-drop, either he has a bad hand for Zoo, or he's probably a Handlock. Handlock can get interesting. Can be a little hard if they get a lot of taunts, but I think our deck is pretty good against... Oh, it is a Zoo deck. In which case, I think we just win because they missed their 1-drop, and we're just going to out-tempo them. Tempo Zoo. What's up? Yeah, I'm going to coin out my Flame Imp here. Just because we know he's not going to be board wiping us anytime soon. And we're going to curve out perfectly anyway. So let's see what he's got. Come on, Zoo deck. Try the Zoomy. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Alright, we're going to hope it doesn't hit the Haunted Creeper. Okay. Attack, and we're absolutely trading this here. And we'll go face with the Voidwalker. And right now we're pretty ahead on board. It's turn 4 for him. I guess he could Implosion our Knife Juggler. Ooh, he's tapping. Okay. Oh, and he's going to get a trade in. But that's fine because we're going to get a free kill on his Direwolf Alpha. And probably be able to kill off some of these 1/1s with the 1/1s that this guy spawns. Yep. I'm going to play this. Play this guy on these two creatures. Hopefully it pings this guy. Okay, so it did. That was completely our ideal situation. But even if he hadn't hit the Spider, playing the Defender of Argus versus the Void Caller allows these guys to survive if that 1/1 attacks into them. Loatheb is not scary because we're not playing any sort of spells. Well, I guess we have Implosion, but honestly probably wouldn't be playing that anyway. So I could play the Direwolf Alpha and trade, but I think I'm going to just play the Void Caller out to try to get some tempo going and be able to trade the Doom Guard in. We're going to... Yep, we're just going to attack all face here. That's the thing about the mirror match, is that you have to remember that your opponent's life total essentially means that they're drawing cards. The more life they have, the more cards they can draw. If you can just take their health down, they're going to lose. I don't see how this guy could possibly win this game. If he kills off the Void Caller, we're going to get a Doom Guard. We just have... Our hand is stacked. Oh, now he's super dead. My shield for not sure that it matters. Trade. This is going here. And this is going to go here. And he is super dead. Style points with the abusive sergeant. Alright. So, he had not a super stellar hand, but our hand was super good. Honestly, we probably would have won anyway if he had a 1-drop.